Welcome to the Penang Institute. Thank you for being with us tonight. We have a very distinguished speaker, and if I may introduce him to you, and most of you know him very well, right? Mr. Kun Lim is the president of the Kun Lim Studio LLC in Seattle, USA, and principal designer of Kun Lim Architect in Kuala Lumpur. His portfolio encompasses a wide range of project types, including mixed-use, multifamily, commercial, athletic, campus, worship, medical, recreational, township planning across Asia and the US. His concept master plan proposal while working for BEP Architect won the invited design competition for Putrajaya, the new administrative capital city of Malaysia, in 1994. He then served as the lead planner for the master planning of Putrajaya from 1994 to 1996 with the multidisciplinary consortium Kumpulan Hotel Lestari Sendirian Berhad, in which BEP Architect was a member, and Mr. Kun Lim and his projects are featured regularly in architectural and mainstream media, including TV in Asia. He speaks, of course, quite regularly about his projects and practices at conferences and forums in Asia, Europe, and the US. He's a board member of the Representing Design Professionals, the City of Seattle Design Review Board. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Kim.
Thank you for the introduction. Good evening to all of you. Some of my most memorable experience from my childhood was an occasional trip from my kampung in Kubang Rotan, Kedah, to the big city of Kedah, a big city of Alsta, by boat. The river behind my house in Kubang Rotan was a river of love and happiness. It was a river that would bind all our siblings together. As my mom had to work day and night in the paddy field, all our siblings, we love to entertain ourselves in our house, in our compound, and in next to the river, catching fish, swimming in the river. Just this was me, my brother Kunsan. And until today, in my dreams and memories, the river behind my house is still a river of ideas to me. The rivers that motivated me to move forward, to involve in, to try to remember my roots and my past, and to try to be as humble as possible. I do not have much recollection about my father because he passed away when I was 2 years old, but I remember about every single corner of the house built by him. To me, my father was almost a so-called green architect. He built our kampung house 60 plus years ago, and it is truly a green house, green architecture, and it should be awarded the Platinum Green Building Index in Malaysia. Why I say that? First, all the materials are sourced locally. Second thing, the house was designed in response to the harsh tropical climate. For instance, in front of the house, this Lanai space serves as a buffer to protect the inhabitants from the harsh tropical weather, monsoon, rain, or harsh sunlight. And it also serves as an in-between space between outdoor and indoor. And one of the things I remember most about our house was in the kitchen. In the kitchen, there was this so-called water tank, about 10 feet by 8 feet by maybe 6 feet or 8 feet tall, built with the cement water tank. And because it was built with cement, it acted like a natural air conditioning system to cool down the whole room. And secondly, my father used a rainwater harvesting to collect the water, and we use it for everyday use, such as shower, cooking, and so on. And we live in a very sustainable life. We raise chicken, we have a pigeon coop, we have coconut trees, we have almost everything that we need to survive. We have a fish pond, we have a vegetable porch, we get everything from the land. This is my sister, my business partner again, architect Kunsan. And you can see a few people there. Those are like gambler, compulsive gambling. One of them was my brother, Dr. Lim Kun Eng. I remember when he was a little boy, he loved to gamble. My mom will chase after him. When my mom found out, sometimes he had to jump into the river to escape from my mother. And now he's one of the most famous doctors in Taiwan. Yeah. And our house to me, it's a green architecture, greenhouse, green design. In front of the house, we have this compound, quite a big compound. My mom used it to drive the so-called paddy. It also serves as a communal space for all of us, for our neighbors, for children from our neighbors. It's like our so-called urban plaza. We gather together. And we have about 20 to 30 acres of paddy field outside our house. And then beyond our paddy fields, there are other people's paddy fields. It's like infinity of paddy fields. Infinity. So even we are way poor, we never think we are poor, we think we are so rich. The sky is the limit. And after my Form 5, I spent a year in Ireland because I read an article about Ireland. I fell in love. I went there. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just went there with no money. And then I started my first year architecture school in Lafayette, Louisiana. And the second year I transferred to Houston. Just imagine, many years ago, I'm very old. I don't want to tell you how old I am. Just say many years ago. many years ago, Houston was probably the most modern city in the world. The most modern, the biggest. And I came from Kubang Rotan, Kedah, with no running water, no electricity, and I was transplanted from Kubang Rotan to Kedah. So just imagine the kind of cultural shock I had. And I was totally lost, but I found refuge in the suburb of Kedah, in Texas, outside Houston. I love the landscape. Occasionally we have chance to go there with friends and so on. I love the landscape in Texas. It reminded me of Kubang Rotan and Kedah, infinity. You can see the sky, the earth is like infinity. And I'm going to share with you my first two projects. They are my school project, my third year architecture school project. They are a short assignment. It's no big deal in terms of presentation, though. But these two projects are the most instrumental school assignment I had. I learned or pick up certain design strategy from these two school assignments, which I repeated in my professional work. First one, we are asked to design a photography retreat, about maybe 3 weeks assignment. In terms of design brief, the photography retreat only can be fit in about half an acre land, maybe about 20,000 square feet or less. But our site was a 100-acre site. First of all, I had to ask myself, why 100 acre? When you are asked to design a small building, say 20,000 square feet, in the heritage area in Georgetown, the response, the urban fabric is very different from when you need to build a small building on this kind of context outside Houston, Texas, on a 100-acre site. So the first question I asked myself, why 100 acre? What's the purpose? And my response was, the easiest way for you to locate this building is to be right next to the highway. But I believe the reason that we are given to this site 100 acre, there must be some reason. The reason is probably the instructor wants us to explore the process of the approach, how you enter the building. So I decided to locate the building on the middle of the site with the north-south orientation, so that when visitors, either they go to the building by car, walking, or bicycle, when you go, they'll see the northern side of the building first. And then when you turn back, you park the car or the southern portion, and then you walk. So before you enter the building, you already understand the building, a bit about the building. This is the first approach, which I call urban design approach. Second, how are you going to organize? all the activities in the building, how to do it, what kind of so-called design principle, organization principle. In this case, I decided to organize all the activities in a linear form, so it is a linear organization. And then just like when you have a story, you tell a story in a linear form. How to do it, how are you going to organize in linear form? I decided to have a spine like a wall, to organize all the activities together. You have a so-called reception, you have a studio and dormitory, you have a teacher's quarter. And what should be behind the wall, what should be outside? Certain area like the exhibition and cafeteria is more public, so should be behind the wall. Certain areas should be more private, it's like retreat, is behind on the south. So this is how my second approach. First, urban design, master plan. Second, how to organize the building. And what kind of wall I want to use it to organize my activities. I decided that the wall should create light and shadow. This is what photography is all about. So it creates light and shadow. And along the way, they also create public and private space. And the walls also symbolically disappear into the earth, just like human being. You come to this world, you disappear from this earth. So this is the first assignment that I learned on how to organize a building, how to respond to the site. Second assignment, also in the same semester, also a 3 to 4 weeks assignment. We are asked to design an addition to an existing railway station in a small town in Massachusetts. The town is divided into 2 parts. The first part is on the town center, and the suburb is like across the river. First, we had to decide how to bring people across the river. I decided to use cable car and bridges and prison bridge and so on. But the most crucial is when they are architects are asked to design an addition to a historical building. In this case, it was a building designed by H.H. Richardson. Architect will try to design the addition that look like the existing building, try to like copy exact. And I think there's more way to this. We should be able to design a building that responsible to be more responsive to our time and topographic condition by understanding the existing building. The existing building is a classical building. It has a so-called central axis. So what I did was I established an axis. By doing so, I already respect the existing building. And by doing so, the new building can be more spontaneous, can be more organic. And you have this duality about formality, something that's a strong axis, something that's more formal, in contrast to something more organic. In my subsequent project, you'll see that I use the same design technique for my real world projects. You'll see it. And it happened that most of my projects, whether in school or real one, always have some kind of river next to it. And when there was no river, I have created a river. You'll see it. I created a river. So after I graduated, during my last 3 years of study at the school of architecture, I work part-time. I work about 25 hours a week for one of the most famous architecture firm in Houston. So it was very easy for me to get a job. A few months before graduation, I went to New York area for job interview. I have 10 job interview. I received 10 job offer on spot. So I chose to work for a firm in Princeton, New Jersey, one of the most famous in the world, the Hillier Group in Princeton, New Jersey. A year after I started working there, I was assigned to enter a design competition on behalf of the company. We are asked to design an aquarium in New Jersey. The site is in Camden, New Jersey. Across the river is Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Philadelphia is one of the most important buildings in US, where they have a Penn Standing, where they have an Independence Hall, where independence was announced. So as far as urban design is concerned, you have the building have 2 duality. Visitors might go to the aquarium from Philadelphia by boat. People from New Jersey might park the car, walk to the aquarium. So how are you going to address this duality in the so-called facade, and approach. From Philadelphia, for a person to understand building from far away from Philadelphia, I decided to make it more formal, so it's easier to understand from far away. And from New Jersey side, I decided to make it more fragmented like village, because we call New Jersey a garden city. So this is the first so-called design strategy or design thinking that I formulated. From Philadelphia, more formal. From New Jersey, more organic. How to deal with the so-called urban design, how we address the building. And then secondly, I also want the building to be a good neighbor building. This means that for people who cannot afford to buy a ticket to go to aquarium, we encourage them to walk through some kind of gateway to wander around the waterfront, the beautiful urban waterfront. So this is another so-called urban design approach I have. And of course, I also established and exist with the most so-called most important streets in Camden and terminated into a so-called water taxi terminal. And now I already address all the bigger issues, urban design, planning approaches from different parts of the city or region. How am I going to organize the activities in my building? When you design a building, just like you write a story, you have an introduction, you have your so-called thesis sentence, you have a summarize, you have conclusion. It can be like this, or just like you are making a movie. It's the same. You have a main story, or like Woody Allen. He make a certain movie. He make have multiple story, small story, all equivalent. So what kind of story I want to, what kind of theme or concept story I want to have for this New Jersey aquarium? During that time, I visited a few aquariums in US. Most of them, they do not control your circulation. They want you to be able to wandering around. But in this case, in this aquarium, the purpose of this aquarium is to showcase the aquatic life in New Jersey shore. I decided that I want to have a story that's more organized in a more linear way. So a visitor will start out by buying a ticket, and then they're wandering around outside to look at the outdoor exhibition. And then from there, they'll go inside in a more controlled environment. And then the most exciting part of the aquarium is a shark tank, 1 million gallon of water, shark tank for white shark. It was designed like a figure eight shape, not because shark love number 8. They are not Cantonese. Not because at first I thought shark maybe they have some kind of Cantonese genetic, but they say because of the way they swim, they like to swim in a figure 8. So it was like in figure 8. And then after the most exciting exhibit, which is a shark tank, we begin to slow down let the visitor to be slow down, and then they'll start walking through slowly to the interactive tank for children. And then after that, they'll continue their journey to the auditorium to conclude their visit to the aquarium by watching a documentary, educational documentary about house environment. How should we look after, how and why we should look after the environment. Once you finish, you can go to the restaurant, you can go to bookstore to buy a souvenir, and you go home. So there's a way structured way, a linear organization. This is a so-called architecture model of the building. You have something that's very formal versus something that's very organic. Formal, organic. Architecture model, the real building. The big shark thing. It was me. I forgot what year ago. I don't want to tell you what year. You know how old I am. And Putrajaya, you can see the similarity between my school project, my New Jersey aquarium, to Putrajaya. The similarity, how I come out design. On December 1st, 1993, I joined BEP Architect in Malaysia. 2 weeks later, Mr. Ho, I think he passed away last year. A director of BEP Architect, he called me in. He said, Kunim, we have been invited by the Malaysian government for a very important assignment called Perang Besar. it is going to be a new government administrative capital city. And he told me there are a few other architecture firms already started working on it a few months ago. We were invited at the very last minute, and I have 2 weeks to work on it. And the way I work was during the daytime, I don't do any work. I always walk around. I always go back to work at night. So same thing, on the same night, I went back about 10 p.m. And before I went back, Mr. Ho Wai-peng said he can assign 2 to 3 people to work under me. And I decided not to work with any architect because if I have an architect, I can never finish my assignment in 2 weeks. We'll argue with each other every day. So I asked Mr. Ho Wai-peng to assign perspective artists to work with me. So the first thing was, I went back to the office. I began to look for clues and inspiration. And I found out there are 2 hillside high point, and I established an axis. To me, whether you like it or not, a city needs certain structure. They need a spine to organize activity together. They need a spine. That's what eventually turned to all the boulevard with all the government precinct, commercial precinct, and the convention center, a spine. And it is a livable city. People are going to live there. So you also need certain organic aspect of the city, how to get it organic. I also began to look at the certain information, the clue on site, and I realized there's 2 river streams on the site. One is Sungai Chua and Sungai Langat. And I picked up a topography point of about 22, and I filled with the water. That's how the Putrajaya concept came about. It was very simple. The entire concept was conceived in maybe less than 10 minutes, Putrajaya. And then from there, I began to discuss with our so-called perspective artists to come out some beautiful drawings, more like certain impression, just an impression. And one, I talked to the artist that we should call our city the Garden City. I live in Princeton, New Jersey for 6 years. To me, Princeton, New Jersey is a garden city. When it is garden city, you don't have to go to garden anymore. The whole city is a garden. You do not need garden anymore. And when I call the project Garden City, to me, in a garden city, the landscape and the trees should be more prominent than the building. The building should be secondary. So there was my idea, Garden City. The government officers, the Prime Minister Department, all side very low key. And we began to develop certain drawings and images. We also try to imagine that you can live next to the river and take a water taxi to go to the government office to work. And we also imagine that, I would say, no, I just asked the artist to draw. I also try to say that since Malaysia is a democratic country, what kind of government officers we should have? So in my mind, I think the government precinct, the government office should be very simple, very democratic. And I try to imagine something like, say example, Rosma call up Najib. Say, Najib, dear, on your way home, can you go in front of the office, pick up some fish and go home? So that's what I thought. A prime minister will go out to buy a fish from the fish market to be with people like us. That's what I thought it should be. I just use it. It's just an example. And we also get an artist to draw for us what kind of government building should be. It should be like very simple. It should be the kind of building like the kind of building that would be designed by Jeffrey Bawa in Sri Lanka. Very simple, very down to earth. It's so down to earth that people like my mom, an illiterate farmer, an immigrant from China, feel comfortable to walk in. That's what I have in mind. And we won a competition, and we are asked to form a consortium. I was a chief designer in the competition to develop the certain concept. We still have a so-called low-rise building. Initially, I wanted the city to be a very compact city because Malaysia is a very hot country, should be very compact. You can walk around all the low-rise shop houses with all the underground subway infrastructure. And then I imagine, say example, this is the Ministry of Home Affairs. You design like a shop house. The minister office is on the second floor. So every day he'll come down to the ground floor to have a teh tarik and lunch with people like us. So his thinking about how to manage the country might be a bit different. Yeah? That's what I thought. But of course, it did not happen that way. During my time as a chief designer in the consortium, the concept remained the same. We have water, we have a so-called boulevard, but Dr. Mahathir decided to make it a 4.2 kilometer uninterrupted boulevard. And this is a so-called the final design Putrajaya. I did not involve in the design of any building. I only involved in the master planning. This is what I'm sure you guys visited Putrajaya before. This is what Putrajaya is now. It's like a bit monumental. The building by itself is very nice, but you feel like very intimidated. You dare not walk in unless you dress up with bow tie. You feel intimidated. And at the moment, the kind of material used is not eco-friendly. This kind of material will create a so-called heat island effect. But despite the so-called basic concept, basic designs, that it can be easily improved in the future. Oh, I forgot to say one reason why I put the water in Putrajaya was when I just came back to Malaysia, I realized that Malaysia has some of the best structural, so-called master plan, structure plan in the world. Because why? Malaysia copy from the British system, very good system. We have certain way of doing things, building by law, everything. I also remember a long time ago when I read the building by law of Malaysia, I forgot what's the name because I'm not a technical architect now. They even have a chapter on chimney. I was shocked because they copy exactly from England, chimney. They forgot about we are a tropical country, chimney. So anyway, we have a very good system. And I remember when I look at the structure plan of Kuala Lumpur, and then they mentioned that in certain year, all building in Bangsa should be certain heights, and they should have certain percentage of open park and garden. But of course, it did not happen this way. So I thought in Putrajaya, I should, with the so-called water, it's mostly unlikely for someone to build a building in the water, so we should have a permanent open space in Putrajaya. There are some very nice buildings in Putrajaya, which I like. One of them is the mosque designed by Kumpulan Sereneka. It's like 100% naturally ventilated, no air condition at all. And another one was Putrajaya Corporation headquarters by Jainin Zaino. There are some very nice buildings. This photograph was taken probably in 2006. My son, Andrew, when he was like 6 years old, the one this time. My elder son, Martin, my wife, my boss from Indonesia. She worked with us for almost like 14 years. She looked after my younger boy. She's almost like his mother. And her name is Sri, so we call her name is Sri, so we have to call her Puan Sri. And I moved my children to Seattle in 2014. When my son was like 14 years old, he started to work part-time in Seattle. Every year, he sent her money twice a year. Every year, send her. And last year, he sent her money again. I told, now he's a software engineer. He sent her more money. I say, Andrew, do you know that Kakak Sri owns a recycling center in Kalimantan Tengah? She's richer than your father now. She's richer than father. And then his answer was, it's nothing to do with money. It is just a token of appreciation. That's my son, so I'm very proud of him. And also, I just add in some story. A few years ago, I realized he has a lot of money. He saved a lot of money. I asked him, Papa, I have some cash flow problem. Can you loan me some money? He said yes. So Putrajaya. And then after Putrajaya, I was hired to design Kuala Lumpur linear city. The idea was there was a missing ring in Kuala Lumpur, and then the developer want to build, the developer, one of the biggest shareholders is Tan Sri Winston Tan, want to build projects along the river reserve. Certain parts, some of the buildings will be above the river, and also beside the linear city, you also have a KL monorail and New Pantai Highway. And when they hired me, it was in 1996. I know it was impossible. They hired me. I thought it's going to be a very interesting academic exercise. And they gave me a very nice office building on the 53rd floor, Empire Tower, nice big office. So I say, why not? Nice company car, everything. So I was working on a project for 5 years. There are a few components in the city. The longest one was called Giga World, 2.4 kilometers long. And for Giga World, one of the biggest challenge was you are not allowed to put any column in the river because of hydraulic reason. So we engaged Sir Anthony Hans to come up with some kind of structural design we call transfer to span 45 meters across the river. People, at first I did not understand what was a transfer. Somebody explained to me. The transfer is something like, say example, this is a longgang. Longgang. You put a table above longgang, this is transfer, and on top you can put this high-rise building. So this is a transfer structural system designed by Sir Anthony Hans from England. I involved in a few parcels in KL University. One of them is a parcel A. We try to use a KL University project to connect Kampung Baru and KLCC together. Certain buildings are supposed to be built above a river. The tallest is 77 stories. And we introduced some kind of urban plaza in the Kampung Baru site. And I learned every single thing about green design from Dr. Ken Yang, and I put it in my building. So I did second layer skin, north-south orientation. And Linear City was not built. New Pantai Highway was completed, and monorail phase 1 was completed. We have about 8 stations. The year 2000, January 2000, I came out on my own. I set up Kunlim Architect with my brother. My first project was for Tan Sri Lim Kim Hong, chairman of ICT, Iberhard. When his manager called me, he said, Kunlim, Mr. Tan Sri want to hire you to design his corporate headquarters next to Petronas Twin Tower. I was so excited. I said, well, next to Petronas Twin Tower. Petronas Twin Tower, 88 story. I think at least his headquarters should be maybe of 60 stories. So I was very excited. And that time I had to give away my nice company car. I had to borrow an old car from my younger brother. So I had to park my car very far away. I don't want him to see my car. So I went there. He talked to me. He said he wanted to refurbish his old house to turn into his chairman's office. And his budget was only like 600,000 ringgit. That's his budget. 600. This is an assistant photograph. This was the assistant. As you enter, there's a staircase. And it was very gloomy. Basement is like this, sub-basement, very gloomy, very dirty. My budget was 600,000. First thing was, I decided to demolish the staircase here, make it more open, and introduce a new staircase that connect basement to the ground floor to his future addition on the upper floor. The staircase become like a light, real light, to bring in natural light first. So I saw the first problem. Secondly, to build his own chairman suite. It is very expensive to build a brand new building. I decided to build up on top of the existing living room, just like on top, on the rooftop. And I try to use the lightest structure as possible. And the area was quite small. It is very small. How to make it bigger, to appear bigger? Many years ago, I read an article in USA Architecture Journal. This journalist, he interviewed IMP about his design in the Meyerson Concert Hall in Dallas, Texas. He asked Mr. Pei why you love to use curve. Mr. Pei's answer was, when you use curve, you make a space appear bigger because curve has multiple points perspective. It makes a space appear bigger. So I use the same strategy. So I decided to use curve for the chairman's office, his own office. And secondly, how can I convince him to accept my design? how to convince him to accept my design. I decided to talk to him that I'm going to make his business very prosperous by using number 8 for his design. So as a businessman, you don't say no to prosperous. He said yes. This is what it looks now. We move the staircase from here, we introduce a new staircase, and the new staircase bring in natural light to the basement. Now the basement is very bright and cheerful. His office was small, but appear very big. Now 23 years ago, I always say, I tell people, I did the headquarters for Tan Si Dim Kim Hong next to the Petronas Twin Towers. It was my first project on my own, and it was published in a lot of magazines, and we got a lot of job for subsequently. And I also repeated the same kind of so-called concept thinking I have about former versus something more organic. From I think the year 2002 to the year 2010, we are hired to design about 30 Toyota and Lexus projects. And I managed to convince the Toyota to, instead of having the rectangle shaped showroom, to introduce some curvilinear feature to make the space appear bigger. We were hired to design the Lexus 3S Center as well. The next two projects I'm going to show you are the two houses project, two bungalow. The first one was I was asked to design a 12,000 square foot house in Country Heights, Damansara. The best view is like facing west, which is very hot. And it was on the so-called slope side. So there are two challenges. We want to keep the best view, but how to protect the inhabitants, the residents from the harsh tropical sun? One. Number two, how to respect the existing topography by no cut and fill. So on the higher ground, I have two-story roof. On the lower ground, I have 3-story, and I introduced a second layer skin to serve as a so-called to protect the residents from the harsh tropical sun. Lower ground is like open. It's like modern interpretation of kampong house, open. We encourage cross ventilation. I even introduce a swimming pool to cool out the slab above. Again, I learned all these things from Dr. Ken Yang, the most famous architect in Malaysia, about green design. Ground floor is all open. You do not need to use air conditioning at all. The main entrance, you have a so-called fishpond, and then you have an opening on all the wall, open, encourage cross ventilation. And it's a big open space, but we define the dining and living with a double volume height and 3-4 to separate both spaces. And we have this so-called double volume buffer to protect the living room from the eastern sun. And this house is also a 3-generation house, means that the parents, father, mother, the parents, and their 2 sons and their children, they also live there. We subdivided into 3 quarters, they have 3 apartments. But at the same time, the grandmother want all them to have dinner together. So this so-called double volume space also become a so-called vertical connector, so that the grandfather can shout to their grandchildren, ask them to come now to have dinner together. We introduce a lot of Korean story for indirect sunlight. We use a so-called, I learned this from the Dubai wind tunnel, hot air go out to encourage a wind circulation, wind flow. I think I forgot what year, maybe 10, 12, 13 years ago, Trend magazine the magazine based in New Zealand, awarded this house as the best house in Malaysia over a period of 20 years, many years ago. And the second house I designed, I only designed 3 houses in my entire life. The second house I designed was, I was asked to design a house in Seremban, outside KL, 2-acre site, but the owner just want to use 1 acre. The other 1 acre, they want to have a plantation, durian, banana, and so on. We negotiated our fee over the email. I think it was, I forgot what year, and then normally I ask for substantial down payment. So I met them for a second time at the cafe in Seremban too, I think a Starbucks something. And the wife gave me a check. I look at it, oh, spelling is correct spelling. So within second, I sketch out this concept, I would say within second, on the Star newspaper. This guy is a Wang Li Hong, a singer from Taiwan. So I sketch out, I say your house has to be like this. First of all, I don't want to have any cut in field, so I have to cut off like this because this is higher, lower ground. Secondly, at the back is a so-called national reserve, natural reserve with a lot of trees. So I want people to come in, they have a vista, they can see a tree, and a swimming pool, a water pavilion. On the left-hand side, you should have your home office and your guest room. On the right-hand side, your living room, your kitchen, everything. And both husband and wife, they agree. Just like maybe it took me, I would say 5 minutes, I sketch out. And then I went back, I sketched a bit nicer so my staff can understand. And then that's it. My job is very easy. I just had to spend like a few minutes on my job. The rest of the time, I just serve as a critic. And then drinking wine and coffee. So that's how, and then my staff, I think, what happened? Can I? Okay. So we did the drone further. Same thing, I use a curvilinear to make a space appear bigger. I follow the existing topography, no cut and fill at all. That's how I approach all my project. I try not to cut. We use a so-called solar panel. They even export the extra electricity to the grid. And we use a rainwater harvesting. And we use a so-called glass paver so water can seep through. And then they will not release heat to the environment. The owner only gave me one requirement. He said his friend gave him 8 columns, timber columns, 22 feet. And he kept it in a warehouse in Sabah. That's the only design requirement he gave me. He wants us to use it. That's all. The rest is all up to us. Huh? When there's an opening, means the window is always full height. And we always have 4 layers. We have one layer of timber sun shading, 1 layer of mosquito net, 1 layer of curtain, 1 layer of glass. So you always like 4 layers. I think, so when it's opened up, indoor become outdoor. In terms of construction cost, this house is 4 times more expensive than the first house I designed, the white color house. It's a very expensive house. This is a so-called home office and guest quarter. Swimming pool. The owner, both husband and wife, they became my very good friends. Whenever I have chance, I'll go to visit them in Seremban. And then most of the time when I went there, I always see the husband in the swimming pool, washing, cleaning the swimming pool. So he was very angry with me. He said, good name. So he was very angry that I convinced the wife to build a swimming pool. And from the year 2006 January until 2019 December, I think I spent about 13 years working on this project, in Lippo Cikarang, the township. There was a long story why I was hired. I think I don't have time to share about it. This is about how I helped one guy to handle his big boss, feng shui consultant. So he was very impressed with me. But it'll take about 20 minutes, so I don't want to talk about it. How he handled the feng shui consultant from Taiwan. So he was so impressed when this guy was appointed as a CEO of Lipo Group. He said, Kun Lim, you are not just a designer, you're also a strategic thinker. So he hired me to go to Lipo Cikarang. How to go back? I have to go back to. Okay. I think the internal area, the Lipo Cikarang should be about maybe say 12,000 acres. When I joined them, when I started my contract with Lipo Cikarang, all the black and white area already all completed. They have a lot of like factories with the investment from Japan and from Korea. But the managers, the executive working for this Japanese or so-called foreign company, they prefer to live in Jakarta and commute 2 to 3 hours each way to Lipo Cikarang because there's nothing to attract them to live there. So I was hired to make it more exciting, like how to attract those executives to live in Lipo Cikarang. And one by one, I was asked to come out new concept, one by one. The first one was a lake near the so-called new existing town center. They want to look into it, how to develop the lake into some kind of mixed commercial. And first thing first, I walked through the site. I told him I want to keep as many existing houses as possible and trees as possible. I told him the trees give you the instant ambience. You should then chop it down, just like what you have in this Penang Institute. Then example, the first project I designed for them, it was called City Walk. I asked them to keep all the trees. They had to go back to, I think it was a bit sensitive. Yeah. You can see when you have a darker color tree, also existing tree, I asked my client to keep it. And example, when there is a cluster tree, it becomes a plaza. And I have introduced a rotunda to be a main focus point, main orientation point. It was completed maybe 12, 13 years ago. And so-called the rotunda, I have this so-called fabric roof, but I also have a clear story so that the hot air can go out. And secondly, when you have a lure, I believe James I will knowledge in PKT's warehouse, the water was splashed in. So what I did for Lipo Cikarang was I introduced kind of canopy, glass canopy to block the water, to stop the water from spreading into this area. But of course, it's quite expensive. And when there is a tree, I asked my client to keep the tree. Next to it, we have a restaurant and cafe. So you have an instant ambience. Yeah. Another project I want to show you is also Lipo Cikarang. I was asked to design a new city center. There are like a lot of squatters live there. They are going to move the squatter to somewhere here, and then they are going to build a 5-star city center with shopping center, with houses. So first thing first, I look at the water source. I saw there's some river stream, and I turn them into a lake, linear lake, and use it as a spine. And it also serves as a retention pond to organize everything together. So that if you live here, you can cycle to the city center to work, or you can take a boat and go there. Second thing, I also asked my client the permission to preserve certain building. Like example, this is so-called some nice Malay kampung, Indonesian kampung. I want to preserve it. And I also asked to preserve a mosque, and then they are not very happy. They say, why? This is like the mosque, like no star. They want a 4-star building, 5-star building. I asked them, look, you are going to build your 5-star hotel, shopping center. Who will be like working there? You'll be the people who used to live here before. Now you move them here. So you should leave something behind, something that they have a certain so-called emotional attachment. You should keep it. I think, sorry, I think it was a bit sensitive. How to go back to my slide? Because I keep flipping to my just Lipo Cikarang. Go back again. Go back. Go back again. Go back. Go back. Okay. Initially, James Reali, the biggest shareholder of the group, he was, according to them, he was not very happy with me. He said, this guy could name crazy guy. Fill my entire side with water and no land to sell. And it's actually built, just like Putrajaya. Yeah, they built a lake first. I last visited Lipo Cikarang in December 2019. I went to sign a new contract for 2 years contract, but by 2020 January, the CEO, he quit. The new CEO decided that he doesn't want to hire me. So that was my last visit to Lipo Cikarang. But I was very happy that I worked on the township for almost like 13 years to help to reimagine the township. And I think in 2009, I was hired by a company in Malaysia to help them to come a master plan to bid for a big project, a $5 billion US project in Shenyang, China. The site was in the town center. The existing site, most of the people living there, they are Muslim. So they want to like move this Muslim somewhere else and build a big 5-star development. And I walk around the site under the minus 28 degrees Celsius winter. I walk around, and one of my clients were like waiting and having nice lunch in a restaurant. So they asked me to walk around on my own anyway. And they want me to demolish all the building. One of them is an existing mosque. I said, no, you don't demolish it. Same story I use. Emotional attachment, these people is going to be there and so on. And then they say, what should I do it? How should I treat the building? I said, besides, I don't want to demolish it. I want to make the existing mosque as a focus, as a concept of the whole development. It should be the concept, should be the focus point. And I introduced a plaza around the mosque. I even have a Sangam plaza. And the mosque is a concept for the entire development. The mosque is a heart. And from the mosque, I also have a bazaar for the Muslims to work there. They can have their shop, and they probably will live there. All the green color one is for the Muslim. They're going to build high-rise to relocate them. So you can see then again the mosque become the focus, become the concept, the whole development. And you have I introduce a plaza and urban space to surround the mosque. Yeah. The bazaar for the Muslim to continue with their livelihood. We won the competition, but they signed a contract on MOU with the Chinese government. For 2 years, they are unable to fulfill the commitment, so the government take back the land. And many years ago, I was hired by GMR, one of the biggest groups in India, to bid for a township project called Eco City at Hosol. I visited the site. This guy, he was a chief advisor to the chairman of GMR. This lady, she has a PhD in architecture from University of Southern California. They are like my local associate. And they were unable, they told me they have a problem to come out a concept for the township. First of all, the site is divided into 2 lots. Secondly, there is a railway line subdivided, cut through the site and further divide the site into 4 parcels. They do not know how to do it. There are too many challenges. And to me, when there's a crisis, there's an opportunity, just like the Chinese saying, 危机, a crisis is opportunity. And I look around, what is a railway track? How you make up a railway track? Railway track, you need to have a buffer. They have a green buffer. Certain area you are not allowed to build anything. Why don't we reinforce a railway track? turn into a spine, turn into the green buffer with the underground infrastructure, with the linear park, and then you can cross the different part of the city by the underground tunnel. And then we use a so-called the weakness, you make it into your strength, and you use a railway track as a spine to organize the entire city together. In the top portion, you have a city proper with university, with houses, with shopping center. In the southern portion, you have a so-called special economic zone, like my new project in Bukit Kayu Tam now, something like that. So same thing, normally after I visit the site, I will produce my 10 minutes sketch, concept sketch. And normally it's like something like if a client accepts my first sketch, it always turns out to be good, always, because I design with intuition. So if they ask me to be like, keep changing one after another, it will not turn out to be good. So this is my real first sketch. The railroad become a smile, I organize together. Yeah. And then after it, I just assign my team to help me to draw. Like for most of our project, we do not just draw master plan perspective, we also produce animation, my team. I have a small team where we do everything. So the green spine railway track become the spine, become the most important part of the township, become a spine to organize everything together. And we won a competition. We beat the so-called consultants hired by other director from they hire someone in the hire like HOK from US, SOM from San Francisco. We beat all of them. I only have one guy helping me. And another project, it was a corporate campus for US technology. Their headquarters is in San Jose, USA. They want to build a new campus in Trivandrum. Same thing, they have an issue with the monsoon rain. They do not know what to do. I say, look, you can turn it into some kind of park. And again, we have three components building. One, the first component is like corporate office for the chairman, for the accountant, for the financial people, for corporate people. The second one is for young engineers, software engineers. The third is probably like their housing, their shops. So they told me this is a three component, how to do it together. And I decided to use some kind of, again, spine to connect all together. Along the spine, you have the guardhouse, you have a gymnasium with a cafe. Because I told them, look, in a family, you have brothers and sisters. All of them look, they behave differently, different character, yet they are the same because they are all connected by the same blood, by the father. Same thing. So we have a spine to connect all together. For the corporate office, we have to be more formal. Where chairman is going to be. We have a plaza with 3 buildings. My rationale to them was, they asked me why I wanted a big plaza, because during that time, Microsoft was their biggest customer. Bill Gates was still the chairman of Microsoft. I said, look, when Mr. Bill Gates come to visit you guys, but before I design the building, I also try to study about the local culture and their tradition and habit. I said, when Mr. Bill Gates come to you, we see you guys can line up 12 elephants and welcome him. And then for the second group of building, for engineers, I try to make it more informal. So that when the young engineer walk around, they might walk around, their colleague and there's some accidental space, they can sit down and they talk. And when they talk, the so-called chance encounter, sometimes new ideas develop. I'll just talk to you about the concept in my project. I won't talk to you about technical detail. So the first building, it was completed, but I don't have a photograph of the first building. All naturally ventilated. You can line up 12 elephants. You can stand here, listen to the motivational talk by the chairman of the company. The chairman of the company will motivate you. Just my ex-boss in Princeton, New Jersey, he was a first-class speaker. He speak like John F. Kennedy. I remember I worked for a very big office, three floor, with a big atrium, 200-300 architects. Once a month, the chairman will talk to us. All us around him, we talk to him. We are so touched. Like we are no longer working for money. We're working for something more than money. So that's what the chairman will do. They'll give a speech, and then you also can watch a cricket match in India. And the next project I want to talk about was Tzu Foundation. This is my brother, the compulsive gambler. He had to run away from escape from my mother by jumping into the river behind my house. Eventually, he became a doctor, a very successful doctor, and he was a professor at the Chankam Medical College. And he also, like, his work was published in the New England Medical Journal in USA. He was considered in his discipline one of the tops in Taiwan. In 2005, he joined a new hospital. He came back to Malaysia in February, Chinese New Year. He mentioned to me that you should go to visit my hospital. It's very beautiful, nicely designed, with a sky garden, people play piano. So I thought he must have a big paycheck increment to join the new hospital. And my sister told me, no, he received a pay cut, 50% pay cut to join this hospital. So I was very curious what kind of hospital that can attract him. And then in 2005, August, he called me. He said, look, he was having lunch with Master Chen Yan. Can I go to Taipei to see Master Chen Yan 2 days later? So I asked him, who's going to pay for my flight? Because when I visit other countries, people pay for my flight. And my brother was very angry. He said, I pay for you. So I went to Taipei. And at first I thought Tzu Foundation must be so poor. They want to get people like me to go there to help them. So I went to Tzu. I was quite, the guy, they said, a Tzu volunteer is going to pick me up from the airport. The guy came in with a sports car, Mercedes Sports. So this is my brother, Master Chen Yan. And during my first visit, they asked me the Tzu International Director, Stephen Huang Sixian, he was asked by Master Chen Yan to accompany me to visit all the Tzu buildings, all Taiwan in 3 days. So I began to learn a bit about Tzu. First of all, Master Chen Yan believed that a building is a teacher in silence. A building can influence a person. She was the first leader ever say that. It's a building, a teacher in silence. So in all the Tzu building, he wanted to have a lot of green space in front, so that you develop a person to have a generous heart. Secondly, she wants all her building, most of the Tzu buildings are like educational in nature, to use a very simple color, gray and timber, simple material, because she wants the people, when they are in the building, will be able to calm down, to focus on the study, to learn new things. And third, she wants all the building to have a very clear entrance. I read about all her book to have a very clear entrance. She wants a student, in their building, they have a classroom for adult, for kindergarten. She wants all the children, when they go to school, they'll be able to find a Zhenmen, the main entrance Zhenmen, go straight. She doesn't want the children to have to enter building through the back door, because she believes you always have to use a side door and back door. You'll develop into somebody one day, you always use a back door. That's what she believes in. It's very interesting. And she also wants all her building to be a good neighbor building. That's what I learned. And beside environmental friendly, all her building, we have to use the so-called paper wash, easier to maintain, and also all the so-called paver, interlocking paver, so water can seep through and it will release less heat to the environment. And then she also wants all the consultants and engineers or architect entrepreneurs, when they buy a new site, first she wants us to source, to like investigate where's the existing water source. Once you find it, you have to reinforce it, you don't damage it, you don't divert it. And then secondly, everything from your building, before they discharge the public so-called infrastructure, you have to filter it. That's her requirement. And Shiji is a so-called the biggest non-profit organization in the Chinese world. It is founded by the Buddhist monk Master Chen Yan, but they involve in almost all kinds of charity work. They don't care about who you are, where you are. For example, they built mosques and school in Iran. They built school and houses in Hambantota, India, Sri Lanka. And also the biggest Islamic school in Jakarta is built and funded by Shiji Foundation. And they have their design guideline, green design guideline that we have to follow. All the green design. This, from day one, they give me this requirement. They say, you are the consultant, this is the guideline you have to follow. My first project for Shiji was to remaster plan their campus in San Dimas, California. They bought over 100 acres, so-called Bible College. And I try to focus on all the development on the upper portion so I can keep most of the site as it is. I try to retain as many trees as possible. Try not to cut down any slope. And then a businessman in KL bought a piece of land and donated to Shiji. Even I already know exactly what Master Chen Yang wanted, but as an architect, we are highly ego people. We are very ego. I told myself I want to challenge the conception. I want to do something different. So I said, look, one building, the main assembly hall can be like what Shiji wants, the rest can be like what I want. And then afterwards, I read more book about Shiji. I know I told myself this is not for me, it is for Shiji. So I never show Master Chen in this architecture model. Instead, I changed something that most likely she's going to be approved because I told myself, we are designing for people, not for the architect, not for myself. It's for the community of Shiji. And my approach was, first, this is going to be a good so-called building that have a lot of green space in front to encourage generous heart, like what Shiji said, sin song kwata, generous heart. And then it is going to be a good neighbor building. You want to welcome people in. So I have 3 buildings, 2 extend out like 2 hands to welcome you. Like in Mandarin, we call it, in Mandarin, Yong Bao Changsen, to welcome you. And then the buildings, we divided the complex into three blocks. Both 2 blocks are educational facility with classroom, dormitory. And the center block are the so-called the biggest convention facility, assembly hall. And I use a so-called green line to connect 2 together. I use a lot of natural ventilation, natural light, and the so-called strategy I learned from the Kampong house, from the Dubai wind tower. Hot air always go up. Hot air go up. And in the Kampong house, you can see you always have 2 layers of roof, so that cool air can go through to cool down the roof slab. And of course, as an architect, you are always a politician, so I also produce certain drawing for my purpose, for the purpose of my lecture. So I had to give a lecture. I want to talk to people about why Shiji had to be this way. First of all, Master Chen Yan said, Shiji is from Taiwan, so we have to respect Taiwan's farmhouse architecture. And Shiji is designed for people, so we have a Ren Zhe Pang, Ren. And then Shiji is a place for people to seek help. Just like when you're hungry, you see the big logo, you want to go inside to McDonald's. And then Shiji is a lantern. When you need help, you can go there. So I asked my architect to have a big moon for my lecture. And then secondly, Master Chen Yan taught all of us to be free. As a person, you must be able to let go of your ego, which is very difficult for architects. Most architects are very egoistic, including myself. You must be able to let go of ego, hatred, greed, and anger. Once you can do that, you can be as free as a bird flying in the sky. I did it for my lecture many years ago. I went to see Master Chen many times, maybe like over a period 5 to 6 years, maybe almost like 20 times. And every time I met her, I learned something from her. Even we work on the project almost as a pro bono, but I feel like I receive much more than I give. And then because of our involvement with Sushi Foundation, a lot of Sushi volunteers like this guy, he hired us for many of his projects. Means I get much more than what I gave. Master Chen, and every time I went to see her, I'll prepare a model like the Lego set so she can open up and she understands, and then easier for her to approve. This is a Sushi building completed, I think, 8-9 years ago in KL. The so-called connector in between buildings. The main entrance hall. This is my brother, the doctor. My niece, I think they came to visit me. Last year I was in KL. I was unable to survive in Taipei, so my niece and my brother went to KL to see me. My niece is a pilot with the EYA. Exhibition gallery at the ground floor. The so-called connector with the natural light. Connector, 4-story. And Sushi want to encourage people, want to discourage people to use an elevator. And they want them to use a staircase. Can you imagine when you have a so-called big function, you have 1,000+ people in the assembly hall? It is not easy to use a staircase. So we decided that we should introduce the ramp to move people around. And the ramp also serves as a gallery. And we have two pairs of ramp on one from each side. As you walk up, you can look at the exhibition. Skylight, natural ventilation. All naturally ventilated, naturally lighted, no aircon. My sister, my brother, the guy who contributed a few $100 million to Sushi Foundation, he's also one of my biggest customers. I think, DJ, you know him, huh? I'm going to see him this Friday. Sushi won a lot of green award. I don't know, I think this one is like from Association Malaysia. He also won the best award for the institutional building for Southeast Asia, I think last year. And the next one is a UCSI University Hospital and Medical School. Many years ago, I was invited. I was asked to be interviewed by Dr. Peter Ng, founder of UCSI University, for a 500-bedded hospital project. So I went there. I went there. I showed him my project, my PowerPoint. Oh. Can I have maybe 15 more minutes? Okay. So sorry, my slide, my PowerPoint was designed for 2 hours, but I was asked to finish my lecture in 1.5 hours. Because I was like, this Saturday I'll be giving a lecture in KL, and last week I was in Kuching in a symposium organized by BlueScope for three CPD points. So they said I had to speak for 2 hours, so I speak up. So anyway, Dr. Peter Ng hired me to design this so-called hospital. And I showed him my PowerPoint. He said, "Where's a hospital project?" I said, "I never designed hospital before." And he asked me, "How are you going to design my hospital?" I said, "I do not know how, but I know what not to design." And he said, "What?" And I told him that my staff dean was sick yesterday. I went to visit him in the UKM hospital. Hope none of you were involved in the UKM hospital project in KL. And then I went to UKM hospital, and it was a very big hospital, one of the biggest in Malaysia. And they have like a few hundred acres of land. But the way they designed it was so enclosed. Every room is fully aircon. And I told Dr. Peter, even you will not sick, you'll be sick because the virus sorry cannot escape. So I told him that my hospital will be like, especially the circulation spine will be naturally ventilated. So he hired me. This was a so-called typical mixed development project in Malaysia. Parking and retail problem on top there like apartments. What different from this was we tried to not to follow the so-called conventional car park grid for our so-called all the apartment blocks and facilities above the podium. By doing so, we can arrange the tower block in such a way that we can encourage so-called wind tunnel effect. We try our best to our advantage to design as best as possible to respond to the existing condition, weather condition, climatic condition. Another project in KLCC, we got a building permit a few years ago. We hope the construction can start maybe end of this year. A project for a client in Malaysia, Furniture Design Center. It was not built, but we actually engaged a green design consultant to study about the wind pattern. We should have an open space. We should have an opening. I think 2011, I was hired to design a multi-story sports complex in KL. At that time, there was no multi-story, multi-function sports complex in KL. So we went to Taipei for study trip. There are minister's project there. And I sketched up the initial concept in Taipei. I wanted, this is the main road. I wanted the entrance to be here because this is a very busy road. I thought cars should go in, drop off, and it's what the building should be. But the Dato' Bandar Tan Sri Fuad insisted that the main entrance should be in front, but so we had to agree with him because he wants certain formality. We came out many concepts. In terms of internal arrangement, it's always the same, but what kind of roof to use it? Certain design feature, we wanted the roof to be able to breathe. Turned out to be not easy and expensive. Some of them we want to have almost like warehouse, have certain clear story. Convenient, expensive. And then eventually that we are told we should design like a warehouse, just a single pitch. We came out like 4 to 5 different concepts, published a few times in different magazines, same project. So many people thought I'm a sports complex expert. I have 4 or 5 sports complex projects. Actually, it's only one, but it looks all different. So, let me go there. Can you go back a few more slides? Go back again. Go back. Go back. Okay, can stop. This is what it looks like now. Initially, I want the building to be monotone like a warehouse, but the city hall, they are the operator, they want to make it more colorful. And we have most of the main space are naturally ventilated. Like example, this one, you have a glass wall, and you also have a lower to bring in natural light and natural ventilation. The atrium, 4-story atrium, they are going to have a cafe here. We use an industry fan, no air condition, lower, bring in natural ventilation. It was completed 2 to 3 years ago, but it hasn't been open to public yet. The project won a few awards, including the Best Architecture in Asia Pacific, I think 1 or 2 years ago. But I doubt it won the PEM award this year. Our project has been submitted, shortlisted. I'm going to attend the PEM award this Saturday, award night. When you win the award, they'll give you some hints. They ask you to invite your clients and contractors to attend, they never ask me. So probably, I know why we did not win. Because at the back, it was too colorful at the back. I did not show it in any of my lecture. And then when, for the PEM award, you have to submit, like for first round, one is shortlist to the second round, they'll send the evaluator to the site to look at the building. And I told my brother, try not to let them go to the back of the building. But my brother told me, no, they went to the back, they took picture. So I thought, the back is too colorful to my liking. But it was demanded by the Dato Banda, the mayor of KL. It's almost like Disneyland, very colorful. So anyway, I'm still very proud of this project because my office is so small. And I'll just quickly go through so that I can focus on my last project. I designed a lot of building for Dato Seri Michael Teo, PKT Logistics. Started out with his first building, I call the ship in Shah Alam. And then I was asked to design his jaw wave. Why jaw wave? Because Dato Seri Michael Teo, he wanted to reflect to what the symbolize the 12 zodiac signs, jaw wave. And he's a visionary. He thinks we should treat workers as equally as a senior executive of the company. Even for the guardhouse, for the security guard, it's like designed by like 5-star hotel with a nice resting area and toilet. Guardhouse. And the cafe, the interior designer is TJ Ng, he's here. He even have a very nice trucker lounge, nicer than my office. And he hired a Japanese landscape architect to design the Japanese garden. It is certified as the longest Japanese garden in Malaysia. By Malaysia Book of Record, the company owned by him. It's okay, he's not here, but his director is here, James Sai. This project won, and I submitted for AI Award, American Institute Architect Award in Seattle. It did not win the award, but it won the 2030 Green Challenge Award. And next to the jaw wave, I was asked to design the ship campus and the dormitory. Of course, I have a few disagreements with him, but of course, I eventually to design what he wanted. He said he wanted to make me world famous. We try to do the best out of it. The building look like a ship. What we tried to do is instead to have a so-called very simple curtain wall, we try to have a bit of in and out. By doing so, the building will reflect less heat to the building next door. We try to be as responsible as possible. That's why you can see all those elements in and out, a bit of solid and glass, so it can become a good neighbor building. It reflects less heat to the surrounding, to the environment. TJ here is also the interior designer of this building. I'm promoting him. He's going to buy me beer after this. Beer supper on him tonight. Okay. 500 capacity auditorium. Dato Seri Michael Teo, his vision, he knows it's not easy to be in the education industry. So when he asked me to design his so-called ship campus, he said he wants to double up as a convention center. So you can see a lot of facilities are designed as a convention center. Yeah. You can book for your birthday party. This photograph was taken about maybe like in 2008 by my younger boy when he was like 8 years old. 2008. It was taken 2 years before my mother passed away. in my home in Sri Hatamas. I went to school, I worked and went to school in USA. I spent for 10 years, I never see my mom. In my imagination, my mom was a giant, big, this very strong woman. And then after I lived in USA in Princeton for about 10 years, my sister took my mom to visit me in Princeton. I picked them up from at the LaGuardia Airport in New York, and I saw my mother. After 10 years, I saw her. I realized my mother was so small, so short. It was not like what I had in my mind. And then I told myself I should go back to Malaysia. So I went back to Malaysia. And then 2010, October 2nd, my mother passed away. The reason that I came back to Malaysia was because of my mother. I told myself I don't have to be in Malaysia anymore. And I was a bit confused. And I think 2012, I joined PKT Group for their so-called their top management trip. We went to Kenya, Tanzania, the safari. For 2 weeks, I was extremely depressed. While everyone enjoying themselves, I don't know whether James I was saying, everyone, every day, people take out the photograph, took a picture of the giraffe, tiger. I was very depressed because I missed my mother. I was so depressed. I went back to Malaysia because of my mother. And then for many years in the kampong, when we lived in kampong, when all my siblings went to school in Alsa, I stayed back in my kampong house because I wanted to be my mom. I was my mom's boy. And I was super depressed until the last day during the trip, we passed by this acacia tree. I asked the driver to stop. I said, I need to look at the tree. And coincidentally, there was a picture there, a chair there. I took a picture. I feel so happy, so released, and I make a decision. I wanted to move back to America. In the following year, I moved to Seattle. Seattle is an incredible city. It was almost like Putrajaya. It was subdivided into 40 neighborhoods. Every neighborhood is walkable. Once you go home to your neighborhood, you don't have to use car anymore. Downtown Seattle, Puget Sound, and here is the so-called Pacific Ocean, Mount Rainier, almost like Mount Fuji. And I live somewhere here in the University District, Lake Union. And when I was in Seattle, once I arrived in Seattle, I set up my company, Kunim Studio LLC immediately. But initially, most of my projects are still in Asia. I involved in projects like the Kuching Waterfront City Shopping Center in Shenyang in China or Asia. What I did is I used my Seattle firm to sign contract all over Asia. They pay me in US dollars, and I produce all my drawings in Malaysia. Yeah, I've been doing that for many years. And this was a quite a recent project. I think last year I did a so-called convention center in Sri Lanka. I'll move through very quickly because we are running out of time. This is in Sri Lanka. Normally I sketch out as usual. In Sri Lanka, I try to have a so-called sky roof garden. The building itself is a garden. You can walk up to the roof. And 2020, Bante Pierre during that time, he was a professor of philosophy at UCLA. He called me. He said he got my number from somebody. He wanted to hire me to design 2 buildings. One is a college for the study of Buddhism. One is a dormitory. And the buildings is going to be they are going to be located near the monastery frequented by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So and then he said somebody else is going to pay me. They wire me the money, pay me the down payment. And then he called me again. And no, I called him. I said, look, I'm about to start to design your building, but you need to give me a word of wisdom. He said he has no word of wisdom. He said, what is a word of wisdom? I said, look, when I talk to the Shiji, when I work on the Shiji project, I read book by Master Chen Yan, and then I listen to her lecture. In one of her talk, she mentioned about something like 走路要轻，怕地会痛. You have to walk gently so as not to hurt the earth. So can you say some word of wisdom to inspire me? He think for a few minutes. He said, okay, Kun Lim, We Buddhist monks live a very simple life. We do not have any materialistic possession. So my word of wisdom is no air condition in my building. No air condition. It sounds very simple, but not easy. Can you imagine you have a classroom with no air condition? No air condition. So that was my word of wisdom. It was a simple word, but it's a big word, no air condition. The first one was I was asked to design a dormitory, which is quite straightforward. The size here, I wanted to keep the existing size. So I said flip through. So it was very simple. I think stuck. The next one, okay. It's all naturally ventilated. He even told me the basing all had to be very simple, all cement, very basic. The second one was to design a graduate school for study Buddhism and a media center. I introduced a so-called HM space to be naturally ventilated, to be like the focus point of the campus. And I also have a so-called lotus pond in front. Why lotus? Lotus is a very symbolic plant for Buddhists. Lotus is some kind of plant that even it is planted in the muddy water, it appear to be clean. Just like something like if you are like surrounded by shark, by all the corrupted people, you still behave yourself, something like that. Just like you are surrounded by Najib and Jahid Hamidi. So that was my concept, Najib and Jahid Hamidi. I did not have a chance to visit the site, so I studied online on all the local resource material, timber, concrete, all to be naturally ventilated. I was like 2014, the mayor and imam of the city of Koi came to visit me from Iran. They wanted me to design a mosque in Iran, which I initially accepted. After I rejected because of certain issue, I was advised not to do it because the US sanctioned Iran. So I did not accept the job. They came all the way. They just spent one night in Malaysia and they went home. They came all the way to invite me. But can I go to 2 years later, somebody in Seattle called me up. They said they know I'm in Seattle. So they asked me to design a mosque for them in Seattle. I designed. We already got all the approved permits, but they do not have enough budget to build it yet. The mosque was not built, or it is not now, but I become very close with the Muslim community in Seattle. Like this, and then the imam of the mosque, he hired me to design his Lebanese restaurant, 2 of them. And initially, I did not want to take project in Seattle because of the certain regulation. It's not easy to understand zoning. But I was surprised last year, April, the mayor of Seattle appointed me as a board member representing design professional for the city of Seattle Design Review and Advisory Board. And the appointment was confirmed by the city council. My role was to, together with other board members, to review large-scale project, with the review to approve or reject. So from the process, I learned a lot about how to go around the city hall requirement. And it was, I mean, I do not get paid for it, but I'm like ambassador of the city. It is a high-profile project because the next day, say example, this project was reviewed, say tonight, the next day it'll be published in the magazine, newspaper. Can you go back to the two slides? One more. Seattle is surrounded by water. I live here. I can take an LRT to go to from my house to the Pioneer Square, and then to the Pioneer Square and take a water taxi to visit my site in West Seattle, or from the Seattle downtown front, I also can take a water taxi to visit to go to Bremerton, the city hall, to attend meeting, which I did last week. So it is the city means they have all types of public transport system, LRT, bus, bicycle, walking, and water transport. The biggest water Seattle has the biggest water transport system in the world. And for many years, for the last many years, every summer I would frequent West Seattle. I told myself it would be so nice if one day I can have a project there. This is my son. And then last year I was hired for 2 projects in West Seattle. The first one was I was asked to design a 6-story condominium on a 4 single-family sites. Next to the site, there's a so-called popular tourist destination we call Flower House. And then I told myself, probably 2 years from now, somebody's going to buy all these 2 houses and build a 6-story apartment. So my new project should be a flower house, flower apartment. So I introduced a lot of planter box. And my second project is a 4-story condominium, or I would say apartment for rental. In Seattle, to design a building and to get approval is much more complicated than Malaysia. There are like a lot of process. Is to start out with a feasibility study and community outreach. Community outreach means you have to get a neighbor to support you. You have to publish a project in a website. You have to send all information to the public. You need to have public hearing. So you need to know how to get along with the neighbors to make sure they support you. And I know the biggest numbers of neighbors are at the condominium next door. So I get to know the so-called on-site manager. I become his friend. I brief him. And then beside the so-called feedback in the website, I need to have a so-called public presentation. Means that I have to brief them on what is going on in this project. I need to get a support. I cannot go to stage 2. So I look at the weather forecast. I pick a day that's going to be cold and wet. So only a few people show up and all supported my project. And I go to yeah. And in Seattle, they have very strict guideline. Beside all the zoning of how many story, how many parking can do, how many units. This site is also under the control of ECA and one of the critical area because it has a 40% slope. Anything that's above 40%, you are not to touch. Cannot change one chop down trees. And then you also cannot do anything within the 15-feet buffer. It's not easy for me to explain to my clients from China. I have 3 projects from him. He will be very angry with me. Why? This is my land. I pay so much money. Why I cannot do that? Until he himself got himself into trouble. This guy have houses all over. He owns maybe 10 or 15 or 20 million US dollars house overlooking Lake Washington. And then he wanted to chop down one big tree, quite old tree, quite sick tree. He hired an arborist to do a report. Took them 8 months to get a permit. And then he hired a Mexican contractor to chop down our trees. While the Mexican contractor was there, he also used the opportunity to ask him to chop down 3 other trees without permit because he said it blocked his view to the beautiful Lake Washington. And the neighbor complained, and he got himself into trouble. It will take him a lot of money to fix it, or he might go to jail. So now he is very cooperative. I said this is everything he follow. I'll just quickly go through. 10 more minutes, I'll finish. The next one, I'm going to show you a so-called 2.6 minute animation of Daiso Global Distribution Center. The reason why I want to show you This building was designed 3 years ago. It was supposed to be not just the biggest warehouse, the most modern automated warehouse in Malaysia. It was supposed to have the biggest solar farm in Malaysia. But now the design changed completely. The owner, Daiso, changed completely. And I'm going to show you my last project. I call it my homecoming project because it is in Kedah, my home state. This is Thailand, Kedah Bukit Kayu. There was a township started by Dr. Mahathir 20 years ago. It was initially called Kota Perdana Special Borough Economic Zone 20 years ago. Nothing happened until 2020. PKT Logistic Group, together with the master developer, Northern Gateway, JV, to start the first project called One Northern Hub. And I was the architect. And One Northern Hub is under construction. They have an inland port, custom office, warehouses, technical college, and hotel. Under construction should be completed, fully completed by 20, maybe 25. And subsequently, I was hired to design a data center. In October last year, construction should start sometime this year, data center. And then Northern Gateway, which is 100% owned by Ministry of Finance, they approached me. They want me to reimagine the township, and they call it Ditapan. And I look around. I try to look for inspiration. I look around. I realize most of the earlier investors prefer to buy land on the western side to be next to the existing township. PKT, so-called OpenDC, the data center, Hataniga, nobody want to buy land here. Why? Because nothing there. There's no concept, no idea. So I thought this Northern Gateway, we should introduce some kind of focus, a spine, an urban village in this city. And I begin to search for the so-called inspiration, and I realized there are two. I noticed there are two river streams, one here, one here. And then I suggested that we should have an urban village. And I also look at the topography and begin to subdivide the township into different parcels. And the most important parcel is Parcel 8 and Parcel 9. Parcel 8 is a business center. Parcel 9 is a city proper. You have an industry, so-called data center. We allocated 150 acres for the data center somewhere here. In the city center Poplar itself, beside Business Park, we also introduced a malls, residential shopping, and we also widen the river to turn into like almost like water retention purpose. And on the eastern side, we also introduced a parcel we call it education hub. It can be anything. It can be a high-tech research center. By doing so, we enhance the land value on here. So it is not just a so-called factory anymore. And by doing so, maybe it can attract people to move there, to work there, and to live there. Perspective of the township. Yeah. So the focus point is the urban village, which is organized by this river. You can see the river again. It used to be a tiny river, but the Northern Gateway agreed that I should widen it. It should become a river alive. A river that create activities, encourage activities, not just for water retention purpose or the flood mitigation purpose. And it can become a tourist attraction too. We introduce a lot of waterfront activities. Yeah. And we have a so-called pedestrian crossing that can use it for bicycle, walking now, jogging, up and down the river. Yeah. We started working on this project 2 months ago, and Northern Gateway is going to relaunch this township with our drawings. And then hopefully next year we will form a consortium, a multidisciplinary consortium to do a detailed master plan of the township. So from the river behind my house, which I call it, behind my childhood homes, which I call it a river of ideas. And I continue my journey as an architect to the river life in Didapan East, and hope this river will have as much impact to the future residents of Didapan as much as the river of life or river of ideas behind my house. Thank you. Wow, cool.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunling, for sharing with us your journey. Perhaps you have one or two questions from the audience, if there's any burning questions. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Nice presentation. Congratulations. Even a small request. A very small project. Going back to celebrate your childhood.
Yeah.
Your late father, you mentioned, built a green kampung house. Is it possible that you redo it for today's scenario? Local material, local technology, what we have, with the rainwater harvesting and all this, because we still have a lot of kampung, in Malaysia. So if you could, that would be definitely something interesting. Thanks.
There's something we have in mind. Northern Gateway just hired me for their new welcome center in Didapan East. In fact, I'm going to visit the site with them tomorrow. They want me to keep the 2 existing warehouses for adaptive reuse. I'm going to do something. I'm going to use also introduce a water tank like I have in my childhood home. I already told them they can't agree. I want to recreate the so-called the welcome center into almost like my childhood home, and then also told Northern Gateway that the welcome center is not just for the company. They should have an area, a multi-purpose area, for the local to use it for their pasar malam, for them to use it to exhibit their local craft. That's what I wanted to do, and they can't agree, except they give me a very small budget. That's all.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Has anyone asked you to look at Sungai Pinang?
Sungai in Penang? No.
That's again.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe Dato can talk to the chief minister. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, please give a big hand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.